Welcome, listeners. This is John, and today on the Accountability Buddies podcast, I'm joined by
Dan,
Jack,
and we've got a couple of good guests coming in just a little bit. Duncan's Occupado and Jamie will be tuning in later, and we've got a special guest coming in. But to get us started off, I'll start off with hobby progress. Last cast, we talked a lot about how storage is a little bit different than transportation, and to that end, my wife was nice enough to go out and pick up 5 2-packs of the Sterilite containers that I linked on our group, and then I ordered 2 big sets of magnets. I guess posting those links, everybody seemed to like those a lot because they sold out really fast, the 30-pack, and so I had to get 15 packs to go and work on these. But I've cut all 15 packs, both 15 packs of my magnets down to size, and I'm working on putting those in as we cast tonight. I've also been working on the Frontierist terrain and then doing some design sketches for what I'm going to kind of call the centerpiece of the large desert table, which is going to be kind of a plateau with a lot of the ash waste scenery on the sides of it. So it looks like it's a big mountain hideout for gangers or secret heresy whatnots and secret weapons and things. No games for me this week. It's been kind of slow for my side. A little bit of work's coming up. So I will pass it along to Dan.
Yeah, kind of slow week for me. I've been listening to Fear to Tread, and so I got inspired to make a Blood Angels library. So I had bought a while back a Severin Loth model, and it was going to be an Ultramarines librarian, but he's now a Blood Angels librarian. And then I actually found out that with my army build, having a librarian on the table with Dawn of Revelations will help, because you can use telepathy, and both of the powers can directly potentially negate a unit with an augury scanner from shooting you when you drop all your dudes in, which is one of my big worries about this list. So did it for fluff reasons, but it turns out it's going to be useful. Other than that, I've been building my second tactical unit and just continuing to paint away on my Praetor and first tactical unit. And then, I don't know, do we want to jump in and talk about, I also did a bunch of research on my word bearers list, because I hadn't really read up on how the drop pod list would work and the new rules. And I figured out kind of how that list would work, and it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. So it's actually probably a playable list as it stands, as I would have played it at the end of last edition, which surprised me from what I had heard and read a little bit about. But it's kind of nice. So,
Jack?
I have primarily been working on trying to figure out what I want to do next. I still have Ultramarines in the background that I am currently slowly working on. Like, I just cut up a Gilliman model to move arms around and all that good stuff. But with the drop of the new edition, a lot of the previous armies that I have are invalidated due to just not physically being playable anymore. Like my Alpha Legion World Iron Warriors army just isn't playable anymore because of Shattered Legions isn't a thing anymore. Or Death Guard, the way that I had it set up, no longer function with how transports work and how you can not take Spartans with it. Jeez, I could not think today. So spend a lot of time with that. I think I'm going to hope, I know that's dangerous, hope that the drop of the Custodians books will be beneficial. I started a Custodian army back before book 8 started, and then Custodians were what they were, so they never really saw the light of day. So I might go back to that, hope that their army is logical and just trying to figure out what I want to do. So
Cool. Well, Mr. Special Guest, why don't you introduce yourself and what have you been up to?
Well, what's going on, guys? This is Priddy from actually a couple of different spots, Forgotten Legion and Covenant of Fire. If you guys remember Covenant of Fire, I know it's been a minute, so it may still be a thing. I don't know. As far as what I've been up to, the last couple of weeks, I got in a dozen more Myrmidon Seculars. So I've been working on building those, and not just building them as plasma fusel, but I've also built Maxim bolters and the grab. So kind of mixing it up because the seconders I had previously, or that I have currently, I should say, are all plasma fusel. So I wanted to build up the number and give some variety. So when I broke them out into squads for a Myrmidax list, it would be a little more balanced versus just a straight plasma fusel. So I've got those built. I've got 9 built, and I've got 3 more that are coming in from Forge World tomorrow, I believe. And yeah, so that's the hobby I've been working on. Other than that, just kind of list hammering a little bit, trying to decide what I want my final list to look like.
Cool. Yeah, I've been looking at mechanicum myself. I've got the super drill I was working on, and so I need to get a Myrmidax list together for that. And that's kind of why we've brought you on, is to talk a little bit about your experiences with what mechanicum you've done so far, and kind of where you see that list going in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate it. I guess next up we've got new releases this week. We saw the previews drop today for pre-orders. Coming up next week will be the plastic Land Raider, and we've got
Oh no, it's socks. We have socks.
Definitely socks.
There's 2 different Aquila socks. Then there's
Socks.
a re-release of a audiobook, which I thought was a little funny. I didn't think we could ever sell out of a digital copy of a book, but Brotherhood of the Storm is being re-released on audiobook next week. And then we're also seeing re-releases or made to order of Mark II, 3, and 4 World Leaders shoulder pads and Cataphracti shoulder pads and torsos, and then Blood Angel shoulder pads for Mark III and Mark IV kits, as well as torsos, if I didn't say that. So some stuff starting to come back into production. We're finally seeing that Land Raider Proteus kit that everyone's been waiting for, whether you want to build it with or without Assault Ram, or Assault Ramp comes in the same box. That'll be kind of neat to see people putting that into their army as things go forward, as a dedicated transport in the right list. That's really been it. It's been a slow week for announcements. I guess you could say the other sneaky peeky look we got was for the upcoming Imperial book. We got another assassin, so this will be number 7, combined with the 2 other assassins we've gotten, and then the 4 previously existing clades. This one is really based on the old Rogue Trader assassin that was just kind of standing at I'm a little teapot pose in metal. They got rid of his sandals, but they kept his funky bolter and katana. So he does look like a little bit of a Snake Eyes knockoff.
It's like an Eldar needler pistol, isn't it?
Yeah, it's huge. It's gigantic. It looks like a bolt pistol, but the magazine is coming out of the handle, and then there's a giant scope bolted onto the side of it. So I guess he could hold it sideways and shoot it accurately.
Yeah, it's got that tactical aspect to it.
Yeah, and a giant skull, because there's always got to be a giant skull.
Yeah, I want to get one and paint it up because I just think it's a cool model, but I will remove the giant skull from his forehead if I do that, because I don't think it needs to be there.
What other needle pistol models are there out there?
So the other needle pistols are there was the exclusive Apothecary and Cataphracti armor.
Oh yes, okay.
But that almost looked like a funky Krut carbine or something. It was huge. That
Yeah.
with this gigantic. And then technically the Eversur comes with a needle pistol. So all of the Eversurs that have come out have come with a needle pistol. So this is a Clade Adamus assassin.
Adamus. He's from Battlestar Galactica.
So say we all.
So say we all.
Designed to kill decapitation strike, proving the old Terran adage that the body will die if you kill the head. I don't understand how that's different than all the other assassins that assassinate people, but okay. I guess we'll go into Dan's topic. Dan, you've been doing some research on trying to make sure that your older armies will play a little better in the new edition. How's that been going?
Yeah, so specifically, I had built last year for Adepticon it was really a faux last serrated sun list, so I played it Orbital Assault Rite of War as opposed to last serrated sun, just because of how it worked and building in the characters. But it basically was 5 pods. There's 2 tactical units, a unit of Gal Vorbach in a pod, a heavy support squad, and a tactical support squad with plasma, which will now be warp fire. And I hadn't really read through all the rules, and I had heard people talking about how it would work. The rest of the list, I had a Leviathan in a pod and a Charybdis that I could put the other Gal Vorbach in, and I had Ashen Circle that I would deep strike in separate on, subsequent turns. And so I went through and, finally read through all of the Rites of Wars and looked at it. So the actual Last Serrated Sun doesn't really work because you can give everything pods, and I can build the list the exact same way I want to build it, but it doesn't get the drop pod assault rule. So basically, you would lose because you wouldn't have anything on the board at the end of turn 1 because you don't roll for reserves until turn 2 for regular deep strike assaults or regular reserves. So that doesn't work. So, but you read the drop pod assault list, and it gives you all the same thing, so you can put everything into drop pods. But the trick is you can't use deep strike assault or subterranean assault. So the way the list would work now is I could put all the Galvor back in, a Charybdis with a character. I can put all my other put my 2 tactical units, my support squad with Warpfire, the heavy support squad with Warpfire, all in pods, the Leviathan in a pod still. Because of the FAQ, the Charybdis now deep strikes in a deep strike assault, so that's good. And then all of that comes down in turn 1, and you place the first one and roll the scatter and everything, and then once you do that, then there's a chance of disorder reserve. So the trick is you drop the Charybdis with the Galvor back, they get out, it's an assault squad. They'll actually get to assault, depending on reaction fire, obviously, because if you drop by stuff with augury scanners, they're going to get shot up some. And then the rest of the pods will come down, depending on your roll. They'll be close or far away. You have to disembark. And then you can shoot, but if the rest of them are an assault, so you can't assault with them. And then what happens with the Ashen Circle, which kind of sucks, but it's still playable, as opposed to deep striking them in, you just have to bring them on a table edge, and a subsequent turn you roll reserves from. So it's turn 2 through 4, and reserves they come in. And the way the list is built, it's not, and it probably never was the best list, but it's especially not great this time because the heavy support plasma squad has to get out. Well, pretty much any other heavy squad would be snap firing, but because it's blast templates, you can never fire blast templates. So they have to get out and stand their turn and get shot out. So it's not the best list, or the way if I was building that list from the beginning, what I would do with it. But it means that I can take that army and put it on the table and play it, and legally bring all the models I have and bring them to the table. So, that is nice. I do have a Dreadclaw, so in theory, I could build a Dreadclaw and put 5 or 6 Ashen Circle in them and drop them down turn 1, and they could get out as well. But that's not an assault vehicle either, so they'd sit there and get shot. I don't know what to do with that. That was ordered by accident, as we all do sometimes. So sitting in the pile. But yeah, so it's one of those things that I heard and read a lot of doom and gloom about it, but when I looked at it, it's not. It's certainly not unplayable. It's a list that works. So I was happy to see that. In my Ultramarines list, I was originally worried about how that list would work, just because I have a unit of each of the special squads, right? So I have a unit of Locutarus, I have a unit of Suzerain, I have a unit of Fulmentaris, and the Locutarus and the Suzerain weren't in the list. I mean, not Suzerain, the Fulmentaris and Locutarus weren't until the PDF came out. So I know there's a lot of things I can do with that list to make it work. It sucks right now that the Fire Raptor is sitting with its butt in the wind if you bring it, and anybody's ever got a Xiphon, right, is the player patrol.
Yeah, I think that's a valid concern. I've got a Fire Raptor for my Night Lords, but from a game standpoint, I've really questioned, do I want that as my heavy support choice in a Terror Assault, because I just get one. So
yeah, well, and I mean, you can take Sakarans and squads, right, or Kratos, or a lot of other choices are probably better choices. In that case, right, depending on how I build the list, I have more than one. So, usually I'm buying a Sakaran and a Fire Raptor, and depending a land raider for units that can't buy it as dedicated transport or something else for my heavy support squad. So I have choices. So I could still throw it out there. I think as long as you survive the first turn, I think a Fire Raptor is still going to do work the way a Fire Raptor always did, right? They didn't change the rules for it much. It's got to last that first turn if you come up against the wrong list.
I'd be curious to see, though, this is probably a question. I know Michigan GT is just happening this weekend, or just has happened.
Yeah.
Warzone happened a couple of weeks ago. How many people did bring Xiphons?
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I know
there were a few at Warzone. So yeah, that they seem to mainly just, most people seem to be taking them just for the fact that you bring on 4 last cannons and a rotary missile launcher, and it's just a steal for that point.
Yeah.
Even if they don't shoot down another bird, I mean, it's still a tank hunting nasty.
I brought it on. It did okay. Nothing crazy. Probably did okay on points. I'm not going to keep it in my list.
It is an interesting dynamic right now, but like I said, yeah, even if you had another Fire Raptor, right, you wouldn't want to, and could bring in an Italian. It's a lot of points for 2.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like you do that usually. So yeah, we just figured that was something I had built for a previous version of the rules and wondered how it fit with the new one, and I was surprised that it fits as well as it does. So
yeah, I think everyone's slowly taking the time to look at what they've got right now and how that fits into the new 2.0. That was really why I was working on the bikes as kind of a new army for 2.0, was to make sure that I could substitute them in where it was needed as part of, modernizing what I've already got done for 1.0. I mean, I have the tank list before, and I had the kind of transport list, and I had a foot slogging list. But, as I build single point lists of, single objective lists, like all bikes or all tanks or all this and that, my goal eventually is to be able to field whatever I want to, whenever I want to make it kind of future proof as much as you can with the GW game.
Well, and that was one of the things, right? When the new version came out and all the new plastic models and everything, I knew I wanted an army list, and I knew I want Siege of Terror list, right? I guess word bearers are kind of there, but I wanted something different. So that was the Blood Angels, and I didn't really start building and putting a list together until I had the rules. And I've tweaked things, like I originally was just going to put a bunch of tactical guys and Spartans and a Kratos on the table, and now I've added in where I'm probably going to have a recon squad, and now, as I was talking about, maybe a librarian in there. But this list is really built around a 2.0 right award 2.0 list. So as I get this built, right, that's kind of the aim for it. But yeah, knowing what you can do with the first edition stuff and the lists in the second editions.
Yeah, that's kind of leads on to the next point with Chris. Chris, how have you been updating your existing mechanicum to use the new book? And what do you think of the new book, and how's it been playing? I know you've been doing Escalation League.
Yeah, so, I actually started off the Escalation League with Night Lord. That was prior to the Mechanicum 2.0 coming out. We started the Escalation League, I don't know, 6 weeks or so prior to that. And so once the book was on the horizon and then it came out, I switched over. One, because the Night Lords are very much a long-term project. I'm waiting on the Mark 6 upgrades, which those are still not out yet. So there's some different stuff that I wanted for it that I knew I would have to wait on. So when I got rules for Mechanicum, I said, well, let me switch over and see what the new book has to offer. One of the biggest things about the new book for me as a player is I've always been a fan of the Myrmidon cults, and so they're referenced in the Mechanicum novel from several years back. And it's a small reference, but something that always kind of keyed into me, reaching out for these Myrmidon cult mercenaries to come from beyond Jupiter. And I was like, man, that'd be a cool theme for an army. But in 1.0, it was a little difficult to theme an army completely around those. And so when 2.0 came out, that was the first thing I keyed in on. I was like, oh, you can make a Myrmidax, and then all of a sudden this Myrmidon cult theme becomes your army theme. And that became my focus for 2.0, the immediate 2.0, I should say. So, I've got quite a large collection of Mechanicum spanning 2 different armies that go back, I don't know, probably 8 years or so total. And so I started to see how can I start combining those forces and then buying new stuff to fill in the gaps. And that's really what I was doing prior to Warzone. I wasn't able to get where I wanted to be before Warzone, so I just brought 1,500 points and kind of played a generic mechanicum list at Warzone for 1,500. I wasn't able to do the Myrmidon list due to some issues. I wanted to get matching bases. So like my Thanatar Calyx was from my first Mechanicum army. So it was on a Martian red base, and I wanted it on a base for the trench warfare bases. So there was some holdups with that. So that's kind of what led off, like what would I bring to Warzone? And so for Warzone, I just tried out, like I said, pretty much a generic type of list. But what I've been working on since the book came out was how do I fully flesh out a Myrmidon, occult Myrmidon list, and what does that look like? How do I want it to play? And I'm still kind of in the process with that. I know there's a lot of talk online. I mean, obviously there's primary builds with the Myrmidons. I mean, Plasma Fusel is the best way to go. That's played out both in my testing at home and testing at Warzone. Even with Gets Hot, it's still the best way. But when I look at, being thematic and try to make a list, it's not just some sort of net list. How do I incorporate Maxim bolters? How do I incorporate grab guns and that sort of thing? So the most recent dozen Myrmidon Secators that I ordered, 6 of those were Fusils, and then the remaining 6 were split between grab gun and Maxim bolter. So those have not seen the table. They're built. They're not painted or even primed yet. That's I'm off this next weekend, so that's on the list to get them primed and start the painting process. But I'm looking forward to getting them on the table and seeing how that all interacts, with the Thanatar as the linchpin model for that army. And then I've looked at ordering a second Thanatar Calyx to run as a Paragon of Metal just to support. So I know it's kind of a broad overview of what I've been working on and kind of what I've taken away from the book, more so than a review of the book. But, how I've approached things, since day one in the heresy has been, what do I want to play? And then I go after that. I play, kind of build things that I think are cool, themes that I think are cool. And I just look at the rules for that and not so much as the holistic approach, if you will. So I don't know if you guys kind of have questions about what I'm doing. Maybe that's a better way to approach it, but I think you kind of see the overview of what I'm after.
So for those of us who are a little mechanicum illiterate, what are Myrmidon Secators like? What would be a comparison, or how would you kind of fit it compared to a Marine? Or, obviously it's different, but
yeah. So I think if you think of a Marine equivalent would be more of a skill axe, from a strength and a toughness standpoint, and a Myrmidon Secutor and a Myrmidon Destructor would be more of a Terminator equivalent, if you will. And so they've got heavier weapons, they've got both melee and range weapons, and you've got choices for those. You've got the Secutors are more outfitted for more close-in work, with the Plasma Fusils being the longest range out of your weapon choices for them. I believe they're 24 inches now. And the Myrmidon Destructors are your longer range equivalent, and they come with shock chargers. So in 1.0, they actually came with a power fin, which was pretty nice. But I'm not too unhappy with the change in 2.0. They changed them to a shock charger. And really, these guys are not meant to get in close combat. All of their weapons are range 36. Well, I say all. Most of their weapons are range 36 and beyond. You've got dark fire cannon. You've got conversion beamer, which obviously is made to work at range.
That's what I'm thinking about, is a unit of 5 of those with conversion beamers on the hill, just zapping everything.
Yeah, so I've got my original Myrmidon Destructor unit was just one of each. So I had a dark fire, I had an irradiation engine, and I had a conversion beamer. I've got 3 more, and my plan is to make them conversion beamers, just for what you said. They're going to be They're in the corner of the board. They're literally the heavy fire support on a hill, like 10 miles away from the battle. And like I said, they're not really meant to be in close combat. I mean, they're not weapon skill 5, so you don't want them in the mix with stuff.
Yeah.
With shock chargers, you don't want them in the mix. You want them standing back and using their ranged weaponry.
So do they become lines? So then you've got scoring built in with them as well, or you have to worry about that differently?
So if you run a Myrmidax that opens up the Myrmidon cult, that gives you the Thanatar Calyx as a non-compulsory HQ, and then any Myrmidon secutors that are within. I don't have the book near me, so I apologize. It's 6 inches, I believe.
Only within 6.
Yeah. So they have to be up close, or they're kind of bunched up close. But if they're up within 6 inches, they become line.
Okay.
So it's going to be situational. So you're still going to want to take Thalax, and you're still going to want to take, well, really, honestly, Thalax is going to be your best unit to run forward and grab objectives. But this is going to be something, if you can park them on a major objective with that Thanatar Calyx, they're going to be pretty tough to move off of. So I think giving them the line, and that's not a bad call.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at, is the sticking as many. I'm thinking the Destructors, a unit of 5 with the IRAD cleansers coming out of the drill, backed up by Secutors. They can kind of hold the objective as the Calyx runs his stumpy little legs as fast as he can to get to it. And then maybe put some more inside the walker that I'm going to use for the Macroarid.
Yeah, so I'm super excited that the Macroarid got rules in the Legacy PDF for Mechanicum. I love the model. I was lucky to grab a model before they went out of stock a couple of years back, and I was pretty sad when the book came out and that was not included. So I was pretty happy to see that's back in there, and so that's going to be worked into my list for sure. Most likely, though, that'll probably be an HQ transport is what I'm thinking for that. That's what it was for me in 1.0. I need to kind of look at my options for it and see what I want to throw in there. But I'm thinking HQ transport because my Myrmidax is not on an abeyance, so he's going to need something to get him to and fro the battle and keep him safe. But that's kind of where I'm going with that. Warzone, like I said, I took a pretty generic list. I was only able to play a few games at Warzone. I had I'm on a special project for work, so I had a work project call that was scheduled for the afternoon. So I got pulled away for a couple of hours, and it kind of blew my afternoon for Warzone and on Saturday. And so I came back Sunday and played a game with Parker, and I had a couple of really good games with John Zanka, with Parker. I lost both games, but I think I learned a lot just with how the new Mechanicum are playing, kind of what their strengths and weaknesses are versus previous. Both games were ZM, so that also plays a factor in that as well. Kind of figuring out how that ZM is going to work for my various list options.
I haven't touched ZM yet in this edition.
I've actually played more ZM in this edition than I've played regular games, which I don't hate that. I mean, it makes for a fast game. I know with my schedule the last couple of months, it's been, if I can get a game in under 2 hours, that's usually going to mean I can actually get a game versus cutting one short. So that's been nice to have that. But I do think the Mechanicum, at least with my list and what I'm trying to do, it shines better at higher points level. Because obviously in ZM, well, I say ZM, in Warzone I played, they ran Centurion at 1500. So I had it was kind of a hybrid ZM/Centurion list. I wasn't able to run a Thanatar just because of the rules restrictions for Centurion. And so what I might have done in a normal 1500 point game, I wasn't able to represent on the table for that. So again, I was just trying to figure out how to make it work within the rules for the game. And I enjoyed the game, the games that I played. It just, like I said, it was just a different sort of list than what I've been working.
Yeah, it's been kind of what I'm trying to do, is figure out, what ZM is and how it's going to work. I was going to work on a table for that next, but I think this desert one is going to take my time up more than I thought. So the ZM/Necromunda table will be a little bit.
Yeah. ZM, I would say I enjoy ZM games a lot. I enjoy Centurion games a lot. It's just, I think with the new edition and trying to figure out all of the, so with ZM, you're more restricted with your reaction. You're not able to access a lot of the reactions that you are in a larger regular game. So I think when you're looking to learn 2.0 and really figure out the game, it probably is better to play just a normal, even if it's like a 2,000 point game, just to kind of get your feet wet and see how your list actually works.
Yeah, I wonder if we're going to get a ZM supplement to go a little bit more in depth. I mean, the White Dwarf was kind of a nice get you by rules, but I think we need the old stratagems and all that other stuff back.
No, I don't disagree. I'm hoping for some sort of supplement, to your point, to expand on it for Heresy. Whether it's White Dwarf or whether it's a splat book, I mean, I'm fine either way, but it would make sense just to throw something in a White Dwarf. You could do 5-6 pages and have what you need for it.
Yeah.
I mean, all the pre 2.0 leaks spoke to also there eventually being campaign books to go along with the way the rules were released. And, a lot of the stuff they had leaked and spoiled, a couple years ahead of time ended up coming true with the way the release came out. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do start getting various campaign books that would have special rules and missions and that sort of stuff in them.
Yeah, and if they're keeping on the push to Terra and stuff like that, they could do was it Fall, where all the Imperial Fists fought all the Iron Warriors and stuff like that. So they could keep some of the same theming as we go forward and just add on to that. So there's different ways they can keep around the two legions that they've kind of chosen as their poster childs, and then theme around those going to different war zones.
Yeah.
Is this the month that they were supposed to release the Solar Ox book, or am I mistaken?
October is supposed to be the Solar Ox book.
Yep,
Okay.
October.
So our hope
Or
is
October.
Oh, there you go. I heard Spooktober and everyone's doing Necrons, but I like Solar October.
Well, Cromlech's doing October, so
That used to be GW's thing, yeah. October and Thanksgiving. But yeah, I hope we get the book earlier than later. I mean, I finally got my mech book in the mail, so hopefully we won't run into that fiasco again as well.
I'm still waiting on my MacBook. So thankfully I've got the PDF, but I really want the hard copy in my hands.
Same. It makes it a little easier to flip back and forth between pages because iBooks and PDFs don't like to keep bookmarks, but
Yep.
I find myself more with a book open in my lap, a PDF open on my computer, and then making a list on my phone. So I can go, what does that gun do again? And then go back to that section.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Whenever I make a list, I like the book in front of me, so I'm not flipping back and forth. Because otherwise, like when I made my list for Warzone, I had my iPad open, I had my phone open. I was trying to jump back and forth to do that. So fingers crossed, I should have my MacBook by Friday. So
yeah, I don't know. Our local stores have kind of dropped the ball on majority of releases, so I've just been kind of ordering through GW if it comes out and I want it.
yeah, I talked about this a little bit in the chat. And it's not a super secret from the local shop, and I'm assuming the reps, the areas they service are pretty large, so it could just be something that rolls over to a good chunk of Texas. But I know we've got a new rep locally that's servicing our FLGS, and that's been part of the problem is the orders are being made and we're only getting partial shipments. And then the rep is saying like, oh, well, I didn't get that on the order and I missed this or I missed that. So that's been our struggle. Like, I don't know if it's affecting other locals, but here in Victoria, that's what we've been faced with. I hate ordering. Like, I order all my GW stuff through my local, but with this most recent thing, I was talking to the owner and I said, look, I don't want to not order this from you, but we've been trying to get it for weeks now. And he's like, no, just order it online. He's like, I don't know when I'm going to get the book. Yeah. So, I mean, it's pretty frustrating.
Well, and yeah, we talked about that a little bit before. And at the same time, I can walk into my friendly local game store and, we've talked about them before because they're at Adepticon and stuff, Games Plus. They have more GW product on the shelf than the Games Workshop store I went into a couple weeks ago. And, Heresy, it's not even close, right? They have 10 times the Heresy stock on the shelf that the Games Workshop store does. So, really, I don't know if they're rating them somehow or if it's purely sales dollars of Games Workshop product. But, anything that isn't direct made to order, pretty much if they don't have it at my local game store and it's available, they can get it. And, but it's weird that it's not consistently that way around the country. So who knows?
We just went through a new Games Workshop rep at our local store, and I haven't ventured in there yet to see how the change went because that change happened in the middle of all the Heresy 2.0 release. So I can imagine it was probably clustered. Duncan.
Hello, everybody.
Duncan, what's up, brother?
Oh, I'm here. I've been kind of here, but kind of not because I had phone calls and stuff I had to deal with for work. So sorry I'm late.
No problem. So our topic tonight has kind of been how have you found updating your army list for 2.0?
So I can say this for the 4 armies I have. None of my previous army lists work at all. I've had to rebuild everything from the ground up on all of them. My World Eater combination Berserker Assault and Bike Command Squad and Fun doesn't function. My Sons of Horus Long March Army does not function. It doesn't even fit in a 3,000 point list when it was 2,500. My Hammer of Olympia list is illegal and doesn't work. And my Day of Revelation Blood Angel list does not work at all and is also illegal. So pretty much everything I have, I'm building new stuff, adding stuff to it so that it actually functions, but that's been a bit expensive in some ways. Also, some of the things I had that I really liked in the first edition don't work as intended at all in this current edition. My Red Hand Destroyer squad that I had for the World Eaters, I really like that squad. Really fun to play. Doesn't work. It's useless. Waste of points.
Yeah, I'm really going to miss my Death Guard army with all the Land Raiders. That was really fun to play, both easily and uneasily without any other influences.
I did like to play that army. I liked seeing that on the table. It was so quick to deploy too.
It was so wonderful. That was the whole entire reason why I built it. Something fast and easy, so I didn't have to worry about it.
Is that the one Nicholas borrowed at
Yep.
Decepticon that one year? Yeah.
Yep. It was a great army to borrow out to people because of how easy to play. There wasn't any tricks or any secret to it. It's like, well, here's 4 tanks. These guys go in the tanks, and you drive forward and shoot and attack, rinse and repeat.
I mean, it absolutely worked. It's kind of like my World Eaters, which was 4 blocks of dudes and rhinos, a block of dudes in a vets in a termite, a block of guys in an Anvilus with a butthole tattoo, and a command squad of bikes, and it worked with speeders. But the Anvilus doesn't work. The 4 squads of the spoilers now don't work because they're all weapon skill 4, and so you feed them to an elite, and it's just going to get chewed up. I didn't have any dreads in that army, so that kind of hurts them too. And the speeders aren't nearly as functional as they used to be in some ways. In other ways, they're more, but it's different. And the command squad, you apparently can't attach a medic to, so that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of think, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with it or don't agree with it, but I think that was a conscious choice they made, and that they want you to use the consoles if you want to put a medic into those units.
See, I was using the command squad, 1 chaplain, and my praetor for my bike squad, or my chaplain was with the veterans, and I didn't really have enough points to get a Primus Medicae, so I had 2 apothecaries, one with the bikes and one with the vets. Now, it's what it is.
Like I said, I don't know that I'm not saying I agree or disagree, but I think they made that decision on purpose to try and limit it. I think they wanted to limit the big
Death Stars.
Death Star mob. Whether that's the right way to do it or it makes sense, right? That's a different conversation, but I think that's why they did that.
Yeah, I'm not complaining about it. I mean, it's a different edition of the same game we all enjoy and like. So I'm just rebuilding stuff like I did with the Sons of Horus. I mean, I built new Despoiler squads, new Reaver squads, the Chieftains. Pretty much I built it from the ground up, the new army for them. And I like it. I like the way it plays. I like the way it looks on the table. And it's fun. It's not overly punchy, and it's fluffy. So I'm trying to do the same thing with a new World Eaters list. I'm having a little bit of difficulty there, but I'm sure it'll work out in the end. I haven't even tried touching the Iron Warriors or Blood Angels yet because I don't want to lose focus on stuff that I actually want to paint for stuff I really don't have any desire to paint at the moment.
I didn't realize you had a Day of Revelations list.
Yeah.
It made it 1 year?
Yeah, I took it to a DEFCON 1 year.
Because you did it and then you took a painting class and you're like, well, anyway.
Yeah, so that entire army looks terrible now compared to what I put out. And I feel embarrassed looking at them. I feel embarrassed looking at the Iron Warriors too, but it's what it is.
One of the things that, I kind of mentioned in passing about prepping for the podcast, but one of the other lists or articles that came out on Warhammer Community this week, I thought was really interesting. And so they had, I don't know what the event was or if it was just a Golden Demon, but they had a Golden Demon in England this week. And so they interviewed a couple of the painters. And one of the things I really took away from it, and it's, it applies to display models, but I think it just applies to armies too. And the point is that you are going to do a better job and enjoy painting if you pick out models you like and paint things that you like. And so, I think that's a huge part of it, right? If you consider painting to be a chore, part of it might be you're not painting the right thing, you should be picking something out that's, hey, I really want to paint this because I really want to see, really want to get it looking good. It's an interesting, thought to have, build something you want to paint.
No, I think that's a 100% valid one of, I really am into the Night Lords and I want to complete that army. But once I started seeing like, well, I'm unable to get different pieces that in my mind, I saw I needed, my desire for them started to lessen a little bit. And then when the mechanicum book came out, I was like, man, I love building mechanicum. I love painting mechanicum. I love making mechanicum lists. And so it was just like a quick switch in my head. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm ordering this and I'm ordering this and I'm going to do this. And I was really re-energized. Whereas the Night Lords, even though I started with 2.0 with them, they were faltering a little bit. And I know I'll come back to them once I'm able to pick up some of the things that I need. But I think that is a very valid point. You've got to love or want to paint and want to build what you're working on. Otherwise, you're not going to have the hobby mojo. It's not going to work.
I absolutely agree there. I also have started on Night Lords. I started on them before 2 dropped. And the 10 guys I have painted are sitting over there, and they're going to stay over there because I utterly lost all inspiration to build the army that I was building. I'm sure I can find a way to make it work. I'm sure I can find a way to tweak it and be something I want to play. But it's just the theme that I was building them around just doesn't really exist. So it's hard for me to convince myself to do it, which is why I've been still working on and putting around my Sons of Horus and my World Eaters, because they have my attention and they're stuff I want to do.
Yeah, that's important. I think for this hobby, it's something you spend so much time on, you spend so much money on, you don't want to do whatever you're working on, like really in your heart, you're not going to do it. You're not going to finish it. So set it aside for the moment, just like you said, Duncan, just like I did. You'll come back around to it. I mean, I will come back around to the Imperial Fist. And that was something that in my mind, 5 years ago, I was like, man, I really want to do this. And then I didn't. And so I've got some models, I set them aside. Now I'll come back to them at some point, but it's not my passion to do right now. So, why am I going to force myself to do it?
Makes perfect sense to me, sir. I'm absolutely in the same boat with stuff.
Yeah, it also leads to a conversation I have often with folks, and that, I share my hobby with people who are not in the same hobby, like people I work with and whatnot. I show them models and guys from the Boy Scout troop. And one of the most common responses I get is, I don't know how you do that. I don't have the patience to be able to sit down and paint like that. And it's the exact opposite for me, right? The painting table, I have 2 happy places, and one of them is out in the middle of the woods, nowhere, on a canoe with a bunch of nature around. And the other one is sitting here at a hobby table, usually with either an audiobook on or a bunch of you dudes chatting to chat with and painting models. And, this is how I relax and get able to have enough patience to deal with everything else. And it's, I think you really have to, you have to enjoy it in order for this to be your hobby. And I think, most of us probably all realize that, but, it's one of the things, if you're working on a project and it starts feeling like a chore, jump to a different project, right? It's, nothing's going to drastically bad's going to happen if you don't paint this dude tonight and you paint someone else instead, right? I mean, you end up with a couple extra models halfway painted, right? But it's not the end of the world by any stretch. So
I hear you there. Unless you're under a deadline crunch for stuff for an event,
Yeah.
paint what you like. I mean, this
Even
is
if you're under a deadline, I mean, it's not the end of the world. So, I mean, it sucks if, family and life come up. That's living. Sometimes you
Right.
got to put other stuff off to get that stuff done. And I've always said that, hobby is the thing that allows you to do everything that you actually have to do.
Yeah, Jacob didn't finish his Thousand Sons. I'm sure he'll talk about it more, but he ended up borrowing a different army for Michigan GT.
Yeah.
I bet he had a good time. And we've already talked about it, right? I think everybody here probably has an army that we'd be willing to loan to a buddy if they wanted to come in for an event.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I last Adepticon 2019, Greg Dan was flying over from the UK and didn't want to bring an army with him, and I was already bringing up a lot of stuff for all our games. So I said, "Yeah, tell me what you want me to bring. Here's everything else I have painted that I'm not playing with."
I mean, Nicholas has played in a number of events with borrowed lists. So between Ryan and Jack and a couple other folks. So
Yeah.
For the 2020 Adepticon that didn't happen, I was taking my my Iron Warriors up to loan to a friend of mine named Chris Asher, who was planning on playing with my Iron Warriors. I've loaned my Sons of Horus in 1.0 to my buddy Corin so that he could have an army to learn how to play Heresy at an event, and he had fun. I mean, that's what this entire hobby is about, is enjoying what you do as it's a hobby. It's not your job. And if it is your job, you find another hobby.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've always said that the moment this becomes work, then I'm out. I'll focus on something else. I've got other interests I can pursue, but I firmly keep it in the hobby view. That's I guess why I don't stress about it. Like I maybe did a few years ago. It's like, well, I'll get stuff done, or if I don't, I'll take an old army and it's fine. It all works out. I'm gonna go and have fun. And I've tried to share that with new guys. There's a guy in our local that's recently back to the hobby after being out for about 10 years. And he was stressing prior to Warzone because he didn't have some stuff complete. And several guys locally were like, "Hey, well, I've got the army that you play. I'll loan you some units, and boom, you're good." And at first, he was a little hesitant because that's not, honestly, 10 years ago and 40K. That's not the way it was. But I told him, I was like, "Dude, that's just how we are. It's a family. You get to know these guys, and we're going to help you out. You're going to help us out at times, and." It all comes together because we just want to go roll some dice and blow some stuff up and have a good time.
Well, and even at Adepticon, we had the one event. Actually, it was your event, Priddy, that Flat Priddy ran.
Oh yeah.
And the guy that they had picked out to win, because I played in that one. They picked out to win best painted come up, and they're like, "Oh, you win best painted." And he's like, "I didn't paint this army." So, they reevaluated, and he was just straight up and said, "I don't deserve to win that because I didn't do it." Which is
a gentleman's thing.
Yeah,
for sure.
Which is what I'd expect out of this group. So
yeah, for sure, that's just part of it. Like I've got stuff for non-heresy that I've contracted out, and I'm up front like, "Hey, so and so painted this, George painted this, or Tick painted this, and if you want something cool like this, contact those guys."
Yeah, didn't Zach paint all your AT stuff too?
Yeah, Zach painted all my AT stuff, and actually Zach has. I got out of AT because no one locally plays it, so I sold it back to Zach here this past year. So yeah, that was another good example. It's like, I know I wasn't gonna have time to paint an AT army on top of my Adepticon stuff, so contracted out, and at the event said, "Hey, Zach Padgett painted this. If you guys want cool AT stuff, hit that guy up."
Yep. I have had a couple people ask about painting D&D miniature. My response is, I'm like, "Here's the deal." I'm like, one, I'm not gonna set a price. If you decide you want to pay or buy me a model or something for doing it, once you see what I get done, you can do that, but I'm not gonna do it on a pay basis. And two, no deadlines. I'm gonna paint it when I want to paint it, when I feel like painting it for you, and I'll paint it up. And when it gets done, and hopefully you like it. And that's always my if people ask me to paint models, that's kind of my response, because I don't want to make it work, right? I want it to.
Yeah.
That's just mine. I get the people that do it for commissions, and that more power to them. It's just not what I want to do.
I hear you there. I'm sort of working and sort of not working on the army for Corin for his Alpha Legion. I've got it here. I've got some of it assembled. I've got some of it base coated. I've got some paint on some of it, but it's not anything I have that's a pressing thing I absolutely have to get done, especially since, he and I haven't had a chance to get him to play the new edition. And no, I have no intention of ever doing commission jobs for anybody because I don't want that kind of headache in my hobby.
Yeah, I did it for years, and it is definitely something that is always there. The people I was paid for, I really, and I recommend this for anyone who's thinking about doing it as commission as a business, even for friends, is make sure you get in writing what you're doing. Is there was a lot of times where I would do something because they told me to, and then the requirements for the work changed midway through because who I was working for at the time. So make sure everything is always in writing when you can get it. That's a good rule for life too.
Well, guys, I hate to bail, but I've got a very early day in the morning, so
I was actually going to end it. So
oh wow, okay.
I'm glad I showed up when I did.
Good timing then.
Yeah. So always remember to be accountable to your buddy, and the buddies that I've been joined with this week are
Dan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Priddy.
Thank you for joining us this week, and we'll talk to you next time.